Welcome to THA Talks, for free thought and open minds. Hello, I'm Paul Obitelli and you're listening to edition 91 of THA Talks, the alternative podcast show from the UK, bringing you weekly shows and all the best interviews we can get our sticky mitts on. If you'd like to check out our full archive, just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. Our talks include news, conspiracies, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion, and much more. For anyone who'd like to contact us and give some feedback or recommend a guest for the show, you can email us at info@thatalks.com, or you can go to our website and click on our contact link there. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the show via our RSS feed, and you can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher and many other podcast directories out there. Well, hello again, and thank you for tuning in to THA Talks. It's good to be back here as always. It's actually quite sunshiny as I'm doing this. It's a Sunday afternoon, the 11th of October, and here in the UK we've still got a bit of sun shining on us out there, which is nice as we're creeping towards the winter. We're not feeling so shortchanged of a summer. I've mentioned before on the show I do like the seasons, and it is something we are privileged with here in the UK. We see the seasons, and they're very spiritual times. And when we have the sun still creeping around in October, it's a nice feeling. But I'm also having to throw out an apology to Shana, who really wanted to be on this show today because she's fascinated with the subject. But I let her know, I confirmed it with her too late, and she couldn't make it in the end. So I got a little bit of a telling off. Sorry, Shana, but she will be back soon, no doubt, for other guests in the future. Plenty of which we have in the pipeline. But one person that did know about the show in time and is waiting in the midst, that's waiting for me to contact them via the wonders of technology across the other side of London. There is a surge, and there most certainly is a dramaturge, and some people call him David Parry.
Oh, Paul, come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look, and you'll see what you truly wish to be. On this Sunday afternoon, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and how are you today?
I am hopping mad.
You're mad? That's...
Hopping mad, love. Hopping mad. About issues I'm not going into at the minute.
Why aren't you going to go into them? You can't tease us like that.
Oh, I can, you see, I can. I mean, I'm under lots of pressure. I've got to finish book 6 in my editing contract by midnight tonight, and I'm melting down in worry about that. And they're gossiping about me again at the Pagan Federation.
No, they're not gossiping again. That's a bit unusual for the Pagan Federation to gossip, isn't it?
Isn't it unknown? And, it wouldn't be so bad if they even got their facts right, said it to your face, or actually confronted you, which none of them have the guts to do.
Well, I think everyone should be free to have their own political view. I don't think anyone owns... I don't think you need a licence for that to be a pagan, do you?
Well, let's leave it there. Free thoughts and open minds is obviously something they don't share with us.
Well, I have to say I agree. I agree there. And that's... I think that's... You've got to state truth when it's worthy of stating. Okay, well, this week we'll be speaking with Dirk Bruere. I hope I've pronounced his second name right there. I'm not actually sure. I'll have to check that when Dirk comes on. But he is a founder member and current nominal leader of Zero State, and is the founder member, secretary, and deputy leader of the Transhumanist Party in the UK. He is a member of the Futurists Board of the Lifeboat Foundation, a consultant to the Institute for Social Futurism, and the founder of the Consensus. In 2002 CE, he attended Nottingham University and later what is now Westminster University, and has a BSc in physics. He has pursued careers in electronics and computer research, and is a research engineer at Surface Measurement Systems. So this is going to be spicy. Hi there, Dirk. You're a busy man, so we're glad to finally get you on the show.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Well, I wanted to check with you actually. Check that I was actually pronouncing your second name right. Is Bruere? Is that right?
That's close enough. Originally in French, it was Bruyere. If you go back far enough, de la Bruyere, and I normally pronounce it with the old Y in it because it's easy for most people to say Bruyere.
Yeah, Bruyere. Well, no, it's a cool. At least it's nice and original, not like Smith or Brown or Jones.
It's not too uncommon in France.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. There you go. Well, no, it's great to have you on the show. It's a fascinating subject, and I mean, maybe it's with subjects like this, it might be best to start from scratch because it's obviously quite a complex subject. Could we start off for those that are a bit clueless of what actually transhumanism is? Could you give a bit of a synopsis about it all?
Yeah, I suppose I could read out one of the FAQs that various transhumanist associations and groups have put together. But the bottom line is it's about the technological enhancement of humanity. Now, I don't mean sort of adding on binoculars or eyeglasses or hearing aids. I mean internal modifications to the human beings to extend their capabilities.
Right. I mean, you're a pagan yourself, so I mean, a lot of the questions that come up with this kind of stuff is the spiritual aspect of it. And do you feel that you're not abandoning any spirituality by looking at technology as our future?
No, technology is a means to an end. I mean, the ends of transhumanism, things like the abolishment of aging, increasing people's basically intelligence, smartness, compassion, probably. These are all desires that have existed in humanity ever since we started making mythologies.
So I mean, the aging. Yep. Is that something that you think you could actually do? Stop people from aging? Well,
something that hasn't hit the headlines yet, but it probably will do in the next few months. There's a company in America called BioViva, run by a woman, a CEO called Liz Parrish. Now, they have clinics in Mexico and Colombia, and they're running genetic engineering trials on people, fairly oldish people. And what they do is they offer a minimum. They may offer more than this, but this is what I've heard. They're offering to genetically extend the telomeres, the length of telomeres on DNA. Now, every time a cell replicates, you have these sort of end caps called telomeres that continually shorten. So eventually, after the cell is divided a certain number of times, the telomeres shorten to the point where the cell will no longer divide, and it sort of loses its functionality. And that is a big factor in aging. And what they're doing is just, it's really quite a massive intervention. They're using a retrovirus to extend the telomere length on all the cells in a person's body. Basically, they're turning back one of the fundamental clocks. So the technology is here, and I think the reason they have clinics in Mexico and Colombia is because these are fairly, well, to put it euphemistically, lawless places. I mean, this is the kind of technology you couldn't try in the West without huge lawsuits, investing hundreds of millions in ethical studies and trials and so on. But if you're an aging billionaire who's looking forward to a sort of death in the next 2 or 3 years, does it matter whether it's a 50-50 chance of something going wrong, in exchange for another 20, 25 years?
So, I mean, this kind of implies that not only aging, doesn't this mean that you could actually make people live forever?
Well, there have been some studies done on what would kill people in the absence of old age, and generally, even if we live in sort of nice, peaceful societies where you don't actually get killed by warfare and so forth, you still have disease and accidents, and the figures vary a little bit, but the average human lifespan without aging in a society like ours is probably somewhere between 600 and 1,000 years.
Blimey.
Which is quite adequate. I could sort of handle that as an alternative to dropping dead in the next 20.
Well, I mean, you'd certainly learn a lot, wouldn't you? I mean, that would automatically coming. That would be how smart people would be, because they'd be so evolved and more experienced than what we are now, because they just have so many lifetimes to learn. I mean, their history lessons won't be needed anymore.
Well, I'm not sure about that. There are some things I've obviously forgotten a great deal of things that happened in my childhood, and that's not all that many decades back.
That's true, yeah.
So but the big implications are social implications. I mean, it's all going to hit the fan when suddenly, for example, somebody like Rupert Murdoch walks in, the 80-something-year-old owner of News International. He looks 40 or 30. And, well, the biggest implication has to do with the social cost of old age. Now, governments would be only too happy to be able to abolish, old age pensions and, retirement and all that kind of stuff, partly because the diseases of old age, they put huge strains on the health services. I mean, it's been said that the bulk of a person's use of medical technology and the cost of medical technology occurs in the last 6 months of their life. So the other 50, 60, 70, 80 years, fine. Last 6 months, that's where all the money gets spent. And if you could stop aging, you'd stop all the diseases of aging, which include, heart disease, arthritis, stroke, cancer, everything you can name. They're currently treated as separate diseases, but they're actually all caused by aging. And now the interesting thing about something like BioViva, if they announce positive results, even if they give somebody, for example, merely an extra 10 years of healthy life, that would wreck all the world's pension funds because they're just not set up to handle that transition so quickly. So it could cause an economic crash on a global scale.
Right. Okay. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? It's the political side, so it always comes into it, and the financial side of it. And obviously, you've got these big wigs at the top that want to control everything in a way that succeeds. So, you're obviously you run the party now yourself. Is that correct?
Well, I'm actually deputy leader of the Transhumanist Party, but I'm also sort of nominal head of Zero State, which is
you fear that maybe if you did really start to make huge strides forward, that bigwigs might start throwing their hats into the ring and trying to take over? Or have you seen signs of that already?
Oh, I mean, this is inevitable. I mean, certainly in Britain with small parties, any small party that looks like gaining traction because it has an interesting idea, they will have their ideas co-opted and they'll be sidelined. I mean, you can see this with UKIP. I mean, they're finally, because they're actually taking a bite out of the Conservatives and to some extent Labour. Cameron is attempting to sideline them with this in-out referendum, which in my opinion is a bit late, but maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But for a small party to be able to sort of survive and carve out a niche in politics, it has to occupy ground that the major parties cannot really steal. I mean, the Greens are typical in this. It's all very well to say, we're green and so forth, but to actually implement, the Green Party policies, if the Conservatives tried that, they just couldn't do it. It undermines too much of their conventional establishment raison d'etre.
Right. I mean, and one thing I'd like to touch on as well is, there's a lot of views out there at the moment regarding things like GMOs and the pollution and chemicals that we interact with every day having an effect on our hormones and our minds in general. Do you think transhumanism can remedy this, or is it a risk that it could contribute to? I mean, what do you say to those people that have got those kind of concerns?
Well, transhumanism, I suppose one of the bottom lines of transhumanism, apart from human enhancement, is actually acting on evidence rather than knee-jerk politics. You can see this with the Conservative government over the drugs policy. They hire a consultant to a fairly well-known academic to evaluate their drugs policy. He says their drugs policy is rubbish. They fire him. That's not how it should work.
Oh, that's politics. Yeah.
Yeah, it's politics, and it's the same with things like pollution. I mean, for example, the whole carbon thing, energy and so forth, we know how to fix the world, but it's not being done because there are vested interests that don't want their power and money taken away. It's politics, it's not technology. We have the technology to fix almost everything on this planet.
This is, when you look at that, it's actually a horrific crime to know that you can fix all these things and it's not being done. And it just, the fact that people aren't more horrified with stuff like that just shows how kind of desensitized people are at the moment in society, that people are not in uproar around this, because as you say, these problems can be fixed. They can be fixed. Do you think that you guys could really have an impact to push for this thing, like a realistic way of doing that?
I think eventually, yes, but it takes time. I mean, it took the Green Party, for example. I first voted for Jonathan Porritt in Westminster when he was standing for the Ecology Party in the late 70s, and it's taken them 35 years to get where they are now and actually have an impact. I think it'll take our sort of worldview. It'll arrive a lot quicker than that because things tend to move faster now, especially with the internet. But it takes time, and like you say, we're looking at basically crimes. For example, we're currently in the middle of I think they call it the sixth extinction, where the direct effects of humanity is causing the extinction of maybe half the biosphere. I mean, that's a crime on a cosmic scale.
Yeah. David, are you taking all this interesting stuff?
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I've had the pleasure to know Dirk on and off for a number of years. I also am acquainted with Nick Bostrom. I don't know if he's a friend of yours as well.
I know him to say hello to, but I don't really interact with him a lot. I tend to sort of know one of the other guys, Anders Sandberg, a bit closely.
Interesting. I mean, I'm sat here thinking about smart wigs and sort of external developments and all those sorts of things. What about internal enhancements, Dirk? I mean, the two things that worry me, the minute we remove ethics from something, human beings being what they are, is all this just simply making us cattle for the rich? And would it actually ever filter down to people who need these sorts of things on a general basis?
Well, you can ask that about antibiotics. I mean, is that only for the rich to keep the rich healthy while the poor die in droves? I mean, maybe it was for a few years, but it certainly isn't now. I mean, even the really big super secrets like how to build an atom bomb, nuclear bomb, the Americans couldn't keep that secret. So, if for example, there is an anti-aging drug or technique that is developed and works, no way is that going to be kept secret, and no way can it be overpriced because, the pirates in China or Bolivia or wherever will start supplying it. I mean, we're talking about something that would make the global drug trade, illegal drug trade, look like nothing.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
This is the kind of libertarian approach that I think you favour. If something is overpriced, you rip it off. It's simple as that. If it costs pennies to make and it's being sold for thousands of pounds, why pay thousands? I mean, this is part of this whole free trade agreement and intellectual property and enforcing it globally because the powers that be can see the writing on the wall.
Well, I'm trying to organise a politics panel for next year. I'm going to formally approach you in a couple of weeks about that. You've got me intrigued. Heathenry. I mean, I knew you from that sort of background of heathenry, the northern tradition. Would you still claim to be a member of that, and how does that fit in with transhumanism?
Well, I would claim to be Acer-true, that is, loyal to the Aesir and Vanir, or the examples set by them, and the particular culture laid out in the Havamal. How does it interact with it? It doesn't, other than provide a kind of source of, or my ethical base, essentially. I mean, it's not a Christian ethics. It's not quite turn the other cheek. It's a little bit more pragmatic. But when people talk about ethics and transhumanism, they assume there's only one kind of ethics, which is Western secular liberal Christianity, which is ludicrous. You can ask the Chinese government about ethics; they'll agree that they have their ethics, but you won't find a lot of people agreeing with their ethics. And every society has its own ethics. That's what differentiates societies.
Very well said and very interesting, Dirk.
And
oh gosh, yeah, go on.
I was going to say this is why the actual editing of human genome is currently being done in China, because the Americans, especially with their the American Christian right, it's just not an environment conducive to such work. In fact, the guy who did the human genome editing in China couldn't get his paper published in either Nature or Science magazine in America. Or this is what I hear. I'm not 100% sure that this is true, but it sounds true. He couldn't get his paper published, not because it was like rubbish science, but because they didn't like the ethics of it. And when you have science papers being rejected because the people who publish them or should publish them don't like the ethical implications, then we're in rather strange territory. This is censorship.
Yeah. Well, we're of one mind against that. I mean, that is astonishing. I mean, any country that can so vehemently speak against stem cell research with the obvious good it can do is worrying anyway. Yeah, go on, my friend. I mean, this is your interview, yeah?
No, I was saying that what we are seeing is not rational evaluation of technologies and their implications. It's knee-jerk reaction that is religiously conditioned for the most part.
I mean, you said something that caught my attention a minute ago that I agree with. I think transhumanism is one of the oldest obsessions of the human race. From Gilgamesh in Sumeria looking for the pearl of immortality. I mean, that's transhumanism, I think.
Well, I mean, there are other aspects, the other kind of long human desires that we fulfill, the ability to fly, for example. That's not considered a miraculous futuristic technology anymore because we've had it getting on for 100 years. So we tend to ignore that. Being able to see all across the world things, as they happen. Well, that's what you get on your TV and your smartphone. When you look at modern technology and you try and interpret it in alchemical or mystical or religious terms or mythological terms, you take a modern smartphone, you hold it in your hand when it's turned off, it's black. It's the alchemical black mirror. It contains all the world's knowledge. You can see across the world. You can speak with people anywhere in the world. That is a magical technology.
Oh, that is wonderful. Let me. I don't share this concern. And actually, I thought there were certain aspects of the eugenics program in the past that were actually very humane and encouraging. I mean, it's got some dubious origins, and it certainly had some rather dubious applications. But I have heard, and I know Nick Bostrom has been accused of similar tendencies. I mean, would you say that transhumanism is the modern term for eugenics? And if it's not, what is the difference?
It's not. Well, there's two forms of eugenics. One called negative eugenics and the other is positive eugenics. Negative eugenics is where you try to eliminate the carriers of the defective genes or whatever. You stop them breeding. For example, Sweden had a policy up into the 60s of sterilizing people they considered to be mental defectives. That's negative eugenics, which is very intrusive and, in my opinion, very unethical because it infringes individual freedom in a very harsh manner. You can't get more harsh than the Nazis gassing people they consider subnormal. Yeah. Positive eugenics is fixing the problem. Now, if transhumanism does have a sort of eugenics face, it's positive eugenics. It's finding these people with defective genes or whatever and fixing it. It's not killing them. And the other thing we've got to consider is that the biggest negative eugenics program in history, that is eliminating people with bad genes by killing them, is going on right now. It's called genetic screening and abortion. I don't know. I mean, you're getting on for my age. Back when I was a kid, people with Down syndromes were quite common. It's not common now, and the reason is because most of them are aborted. You do a genetic test, you see your potential child's going to have Down syndrome. The answer is abortion. In fact, it's become so rare that it's newsworthy when a woman who's going to have a child with Down syndrome opts to keep it.
Gosh.
And the transhumanist solution is fix the problem.
I mean, you've got me mesmerized with this topic. And we have mutual friends that I meet often, and we discuss these things. It's got the ring of the future. It's got the energy of what's to come. Tell me what the difference is, because you're involved with an organization called Zero State, as well as the Transhumanist Party. What's the difference there, Dirk?
Zero State is a kind of, Zero State went through quite a number of sort of iterations and evolution in itself. And the origin of Zero State is rather peculiar as well. But the place where it is now, Zero State is defined as a virtual distributed autonomous transnational nation.
Wow.
And people normally say, "Yeah, what's a transnational nation?" And the example I normally point to are the I think Knights of Malta or the Knights of St. John, depending on what you want to call them. They've been an autonomous international nation without land for centuries. I mean, up until modern times, they did have land. They occupied Malta, and up until I think the 1930s, they had their own military forces as well. Now they are recognized diplomatically, I think, in about 40 countries. They have permanent observer status at the UN. They have their own passports. They have their own license plates. They only have their own stamps. They are a de facto nation without land. And of course, what makes it viable is they're incredibly rich. I remember somebody or some program on TV I saw about 10 to 15 years ago, where they were giving away to charity something like $10 billion a year. Now imagine how much money they have. They could afford to give away $10 billion a year. Mm-hmm. And everyone talks about the Illuminati, and which doesn't exist. Pointing at the latest several celebrities doing their eye in the pyramid crap. Nobody notices the Knights of Malta and Knights of St. John, who actually have wealth, which is absolutely incredible. And they must have political influence to go along with it, because wealth is not powerless. But everyone's off hunting the mythical Illuminati.
Yes. I think we share that as the same pragmatic attitude to that. I mean, the historical documents are quite precise. We had lots of trouble after young Joseph spoke on our show, a Freemasonry historian, of course, who's got access to the documents. We had lots of trouble after he spoke on the show. But they're gone. They're gone. Live with it. There we are. Dirk, I'm hearing a couple of things here. I'm hearing Alice Bailey's externalization of the hierarchy, the perfection of the human race, the spiritualization of matter, dare I say. I'm hearing that. And I'm also hearing pragmatic attitudes that can put those wonderful and lofty ideas into practice. But we're both involved in real politics. How do you see the influence of both of the projects you're interested in, you're involved in, dealing with real institutions like Parliament? I mean, do you see it, excuse me, do you see Zero State maybe, or the Transhumanist Party becoming primarily a pressure group, or do you have plans for government? I mean, how do you see these interests naturally developing?
Well, one of the I suppose original aims of Zero State was not to oppose the state, but to circumvent it. And the way you circumvent it is using technology. For example, Bitcoin circumvents the conventional economic establishment. Because up until Bitcoin, people didn't create or couldn't create their own currencies and have them work. And the idea that people can create currencies and that are not under government control is very worrying to governments. Similarly, communications on the net, encrypted communications. No longer do we have to go through letter writing or the telephone exchange, even though those two technologies were quite revolutionary in their times. We are getting more and more to the point where we can bypass the controls government wish to impose upon us. Economics is one, communications is another, and communications is extremely important. And of course, the way that the establishment tries to get around this, because it's not a fight that's either won or lost by either side at the moment. So you have freedom of communication, but then you have groups or organizations like Google and Facebook and Apple trying to corral that communication into their own little walled gardens and control it. So everybody wants a piece of control, and it's a battle for control. The governments want to see what everyone's doing, what they're talking about, and the big companies want to control where it's said and how much money they can make from the advertising and all that kind of stuff. It's an ongoing battle. Those are just two of the ways that government can be circumvented. But as for where we are going to go, we actually have a related think tank called Transpolitica, and there are other think tanks in transhumanism, such as the IEET and Humanity Plus. So, in a way, that we're talking a kind of pushing on all fronts. Now, the political party is only the latest front, but it gives us a foot into a door that we hadn't had previously. And that in itself is, what's going on. This isn't just Britain. This is worldwide. There are transhumanist parties forming all across Europe, North America, Australia. We did have a little map with not quite exactly with pins in it, but sort of illustrated as to where transhumanist parties are forming. And it's a big force even in Russia.
I mean, it's got the energy of the future, as I said. Before I get Paul back in, because I can sense him eager to jump back in. I mean, you're also a published author. Does transhumanism go into your work as a writer? I mean, does it permeate your whole life, or do you think there are different compartments that you keep things separately inside?
Well, I obviously have a daytime job that I do. I'm a research engineer for a company that produces analytical equipment in the scientific field, and I'm specifically measuring the speed of sound to within a nanosecond at the moment for various reasons that will probably bore everyone. But I've always been a transhumanist. I mean, I remember I was at a party in 1977, and I was talking to this guy about uploading the human mind into computers. At the time, we called ourselves immortalists because transhumanism wasn't a word that had been coined. And I remember that this guy, because he had a strange name and he wore a bow tie. His name was Madsen Piri, and turns out he is now, I think, the director of the Adam Smith Institute. Yes,
indeed. That is a very interesting connection.
So one day I'll have to sort of say, oh, hello, nice to see you again, Madsen. You remember we had a chat at this party 40 years ago. Yeah, that's sort of quite an intro.
Yeah, that's an amazing anecdote. Paul, my dear, where are you going with all this?
Oh, this is definitely a fascinating subject. One thing I wanted to address is, I know quite a while ago now, there was the huge attention on the Zeitgeist movies. I think they made 3 in all in the end. And it was basically promoting the Venus Project, which was an idea of the future, just a real advanced super future where money didn't exist. Now, it was very controversial because it was obviously very beautiful, the vision of it, and the whole, it just looked perfect. But there was obviously a lot of controversy because how'd you get to that point, and so on. I mean, what are your views on those movies and the Venus Project?
They're correct in that that's the kind of world we want to head towards. Maybe not their exact model, but they've got the general feeling right. And Zero State and Zeitgeist movement, we're sort of basically allies. We can call such a distributed organization as both of ours allies. We agree on the same kind of things. So Eamon Twyman, who runs or created Zero State and the Transhumanist Party, he's given talks at their events, and they've been very, very well received.
Right. I mean, I saw those movies, and I kind of, my worry was with that future is I suppose it's difficult not to look at the communist element of it. The kind of I suppose if you could just jump to that point of it and just live in that place, it's great. But when you look at the communist element, getting to that, especially nowadays, people are kind of weary of a lot of this what some are calling social Marxism and that kind of stuff coming into it. Do you think that do you support that kind of politics to move towards that, or do you think it's like a distraction to what the Zeitgeist dream vision it really is?
Well, the problem with the Zeitgeist is the one that everyone sort of picks up on, which is how do you get from here to there? Yeah. And this is what Zero State and latterly the Transhumanist Party has been attempting. We're looking at the next step forward. We're not looking at the last step, but the first. And our philosophy is, we just keep feeling forward, and any opportunity that presents itself, we exploit it. But as for, you're talking about communism and so forth. They're looking at a kind of Star Trek future. But even in Star Trek, although allegedly there's no money and everybody's equal. Somebody owns starships and somebody doesn't, or has used them. But to bring it back to reality of a sort, I've always been rather, not exactly an outcast, a controversial figure in transhumanism, because not only do I have sort of religious/spiritual beliefs, but I'm also a nationalist. And by that I don't mean salute the flag, kick out the foreigners nationalist. I mean every culture should have its own, if possible, piece of land where the people who are compatible live under laws of their own choosing. And that is, for me, the bottom line of nationalism. And the idea of a world of 7 or 10 billion people where there is one size fits all political system imposed is just a nightmare.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think that's the actual. I mean, the word nationalist. It's almost like being given this kind of Nazi-like evil image. You even say the word. I've said it to people before. Like, no, I'm because I regard myself as a bit of a nationalist. Like, I'm not the most patriotic person. I'm half Italian, half English. So you could say I'm a bit of a crossbreed mongrel or whatever. But I don't really have that side of it. But like you say, I think it is important that we have these relevant borders which the borders actually do promote freedom, because it means, well, you can do what you want and this group can do what they want and everyone's happy. But that seems to be under threat at the moment. So I find the fact that you are that as you say, you are a nationalist, it is different. You don't really hear that come from people involved in the stuff you're into. So it's quite refreshing.
Well, part of it is because transhumanists traditionally don't like getting involved in messy stuff like politics, because once the only thing we can agree on is human enhancement. Every other policy is up for grabs. You won't find two transhumanists that can agree on exactly the same mix of politics, and this is currently causing great problems in America. There's a kind of little mini civil war going on in the political arena, even as we speak. If I signed into Facebook now, there'd be 20 or 30 posts that would be sort of clamoring for my attention, because people are having a sort of, I'll put it politely, a discussion as to what they should do amongst themselves. But that's for the Americans to sort out. Things seem to be a lot simpler in Europe for some reason. But if somebody says, I don't like nationalism, then ask them whether they believe in self-determination for people of other, just other people. Do you believe in self-determination for the Kurds? Do you believe in self-determination for Scotland?
That's right,
self-determination is a politically correct term for nationalism.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, well, the fact is, I mean, like human beings, people are different. They have different opinions. They have different pleasures that they want to indulge in. It's everyone's different. So it's like it's not out of the question that you have nations that are created on that same basis, like that. So, but I mean, I'm sure there's people listening. They might have a different, that they are more pro-communist and they have a different view. But I'm firmly in the nationalistic bracket myself at this point in time. But staying on that point a little bit with when we talk about immigrants and that, and I mean, we're certainly seeing much more Islamic influence in Europe and in America at the moment, and it does seem to be growing a lot. Do you find that this could be a disruption in terms of, because obviously that religious aspect, I wouldn't have thought the Islamic point of view would support transhumanism. Have you found a rejection from that side of things, and does that concern you?
Not really. The Islamic ideology and transhumanism, they don't seem totally incompatible. I mean, the same way that we have Christian transhumanists, I assume they're Islamic transhumanists. But the reason that Islam is getting a lot of, publicity is because at the end of the Cold War, with the collapse of communism, there was no ideology that could stand against basically rampant capitalism, except Islam, except the religious. And I think that Islam filled a gap. Look at the stupidity of the West. We've done our best to destroy every secular state in the Middle East. So what happens when you remove Marxism or the communism or socialism because it's politically unacceptable, and then you destroy nationalism? What do people turn to? What's left? Well, the answer is, for much of the Middle East and elsewhere, is Islam. Because that's the only thing that seems to be standing up for what they perceive to be their values and their own people.
Yeah, that's very well put. That's a good point. But I mean, you're certainly selling transhumanism to me. I mean, it seems, because I love my laptop, I love the internet, you know, I like technology, and I myself am a pagan as well. But I think to myself, well, a computer, it's at the bottom line is a computer is made from things on Earth, right? Everything's natural to an extent. It's just had a lot of intelligence applied to it. So it's not as if a computer isn't natural. So it's not natural. Well, it is. It's just incredibly complex and intelligent. One of the things I think of when I think of transhumanism and things like that is a television series that comes to mind called Battlestar Galactica, the remake, the second, more, I think it was in the late 90s, early century. Have you seen that? And I mean, this was basically about robots that got so intelligent that they actually went off and created their own race and so forth. Have you seen that? And I mean, do you see any realism behind that?
I actually saw it about a year ago because I saw some of the original Battlestar Galactica from decades back, and I thought it was total crap. So on the remake, I just assumed it was going to be the same until I eventually came across one of the episodes, and I just watched them all. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the big concerns in transhumanism, and well, it's actually moving outside of transhumanism now, which is the possibility of developing artificial intelligence and where that would lead. Now, I was at a talk several years ago. There was a sort of panel of experts, and there was a question asked in the audience, which was, do you think that the development of artificial intelligence, that humanity will seriously regret this? And the panel was evenly split. And a lot of people think it may be what's termed an extinction event. That is, you know, AI is developed and basically we're gone the next day, you know, in historical terms. I think it does spell the end of humanity in its current form, because once we develop something like that, we're no longer the top intellectual species on this planet. You know, and even an artificial intelligence that is not hostile to us, even if it just ignored us and got on with what it wanted to do, assuming it has wants, then that could cause, you know, enormous problems for us. You know, we don't hate foxes or badgers, but when we want to build a housing estate, they're gone. Yeah. That's one of the nicer scenarios. The totally evil scenario that nobody ever wants to talk about is basically an AI that hates us, and that would be so bad that even death would not be a refuge from it. But on the plus side, the sort of more optimistic version of events is that we develop an artificial intelligence, and it does one of several things. One is that it obeys orders. It gives us plenty of new toys and technologies and stuff like that, and it sorts out our problems. And I think to some extent this was the kind of utopia that was described by Ian Banks in the culture novels, where the culture is the kind of space-going civilization that's run by super intelligent machines, and ordinary people live in it almost like pampered pets. Another and more popular kind of transhumanist meme is that we actually merge with the artificial intelligence, so they become essentially adjuncts to our brains. You know, we're talking about brain-computer interface and so forth. So suddenly all this intelligence and superintelligence and creativity becomes an aspect of ourselves. I'm a little bit dubious about that, but yeah, it's a possibility.
Yeah, well, I do recommend any listeners that are interested in this subject definitely check out the remake series of Battlestar Galactica. It's one that you'll get through really, really, really good. So go check that out. I just want to touch on one thing before I bring David back into the chat. And that's a lot of people in the conspiracy world going on. I mean, it's quite interesting now because obviously we're looking at Mars, and Mars has got water on it, and it just seems that we're taking these small steps between realizing that there could be life out there, and obviously then we can look at UFOs that we're seeing, these flying craft and alien reports. I mean, there's some people that believe that our secret governments have received intelligence from beings that are flying these UFOs. And as time goes on, it's almost like these things become slightly more realistic to consider. Do you believe there's life out there? And also, do you believe that or even if there's not life out there, and maybe these craft are created by our military or the government? What's your views on that subject?
Well, on the sort of fairly mundane level, I think much of the UFO sightings of spectacular aerial vehicles has been military equipment. And it's known that certainly the US government would sort of spread flying saucer rumors if one of their latest aircraft was seen, because it's better to be reported as a flying saucer than somebody saying, I've seen these mysterious lights in the sky. I think it's our latest technology, and it looks like this, and it could perform like this, and this is what it did. Because that's giving information to the enemy. Whereas if somebody says, it was some kind of flying saucer and it was zipping all over the sky, just another nut. So the governments tend to encourage that kind of attitude because they are literally, and for quite genuine reasons, covering something up. I used to believe in aliens and possibility of interstellar spacecraft and all that kind of stuff. But the deeper I got into transhumanism, the less and less likely it seemed, because you get the details of contactee details. For example, this UFO comes down and gives Billy Bob in Middle America the anal probes or whatever. Now, if I was an alien with transhuman technology, like the kind of technology we're looking at, that's only maybe 30 or 40 years away. First of all, the spacecraft would probably be the size of a grape. Second, if you want blood samples from anybody, or you want to do a bit of genetic engineering with human beings, you just send down your genetically engineered mosquito to take a sample. You don't need to drag people on board spacecraft and subject them to all kinds of weird medical experiments. You can do all this totally unobtrusively. So whatever is happening, whatever people are reporting, it's almost certainly not aliens. That doesn't mean to say they're sort of just deluded idiots or they're making it all up. It means that there's something maybe masquerading as aliens.
That's another theory. Yeah, that's interesting. I've like yourself. I'm open to aliens. I'm perfectly open-minded to it and stuff. But I got to the stage where I thought, well, I'm going to stop racking my brains out trying to find them or prove they're there. If they're there, let them worry about proving they're there. Because it's if they want to know that they're around, they can do a bit more to let us know they're there. And that was my feeling on that. But I think there's more serious things going on the planet at the moment that need more attention than the discovery of those guys, in my opinion.
Well, there's another possibility. There's a thing called the Fermi paradox, which it was it was enunciated by Enrico Fermi, who was one of the creators of the nuclear bomb. And that is, if there are aliens, where are they? And it doesn't mean, he wasn't referring to UFOs. It means that if there are civilizations in the galaxy that are zipping around all over the place, and they have these kind of vast technologies that transhumanists are looking forward to, we should look into the night sky and see them everywhere. We should see stars re-engineered. We should see entire galaxies re-engineered, but we don't. We see the universe in a totally pristine condition with absolutely no evidence of any intelligence apart from us. And there are lots of possible explanations for this that people have been coming up with. But there is one that's sort of gaining traction, and that is we don't live in the real universe, that we live in a simulation. And this arises from the fact that a lot of artificial intelligence research, and especially brain research, are beginning to merge with brain structures being run on computers to try and find out how things work. And the kind of technology needed to simulate an entire human brain is probably just about within our grasp now. And once you can simulate one human brain, what a computer is going to be like in 100 years. You could simulate an entire planet of people for centuries. And at the theoretical limits of computation, 1 kilogram of matter can support enough computation to simulate the minds of everybody who's ever lived for the past 7,000 years and all the history. So, and as soon as you start thinking about, if you can simulate the world around us to the degree that we see it, and that's possible in the future, what are the chances of us living in the real one? And it's probably not much.
And this stuff is believable the more we look into it. I mean, as I say, like when we said earlier on, where you can slow down aging and stuff, it makes it, when you look at that, that's kind of like tapping into the program and hacking it. The kind of wilder shores of transhumanism, it's not mentioned so much now in public because it sounds crazy,
And that is one of the transhumanist ambitions, is to start converting the world into, start converting the matter in the world into computational substrate. So eventually every bit of matter in the universe is converted into computation, which runs simulations and civilizations, of vast complexity, far beyond anything the real universe could support. And if we're going to do that, then people say, well, why hasn't it been done? Well, maybe it has been done. Maybe 4 billion years ago, that's what happened to Earth. It got absorbed, assimilated into the simulation. And of course, what you don't want is aliens, charging all over your galaxy, screwing up everybody else's sort of fun. So everybody gets their own little bit of simulation space where it looks like they're in a pristine universe, so they can develop how they like.
See, this is where you get your theories, because I'm having a theory now where I'm thinking maybe some of these grey aliens that come to people in this kind of alternative kind of reality could be people hacking into this system, trying to tell it. It's the same with general psychic phenomena. I mean, what it looks like is literally glitches in the matrix, or people somehow accidentally hacking the code, hacking reality. Yeah, no, that's got my brain going already. David, we're getting towards the end. Have you got anything you'd like to throw into this incredibly interesting conversation?
Well, I agree with you. It's incredibly interesting, and we certainly need Dirk back. There's real ingenuity in Ian Banks and those books. I'm the first to confess that. Islam is a very complex phenomena. I'm one of its defenders. You see, what I'm hearing, I suppose, is the actualization of certain religious concepts. Immortality, rebirth, greater forms of realization. Is that too far from the mark, Dirk? I mean, is really transhumanism some sort of reworking of the religious thirst, promising religious results? What do you think of that?
I think it is. It's in a way, it's almost a recapitulation of Christianity, not necessarily because it developed in Christian countries, but largely because it addresses all the really big themes that humanity's always been interested in. Life, death, the afterlife, the future of the universe, immortality, the Messiah myth. I mean, that's what artificial intelligence is really, the Messiah myth. Is it going to be a good Messiah or a bad Messiah? Is it going to be the Christ or the Antichrist? These are all themes that have been circulating for thousands of years. What transhumanism is, in a sense, is the modern alchemy, because now we have a glimpse of how we might make it all real, and in quite a short timescale historically as well, the next 50 to 100 years, maybe even sooner.
I mean, why is it propelling itself forward to such an extent? I mean, is it just accumulated research, or?
A lot of it's accumulated research. I mean, but there is a danger, especially amongst transhumanists, of thinking, the future, this is all coming along, we're going to get artificial intelligence, immortality, let's just sit back and let it all happen. Except it might not all happen the way we want it to. I mean, there are forces in the world, and certainly economic forces, that it might just turn into a really nasty dystopia. I mean, there's no shortage of, cyberpunk dystopias. But we've got to look to towards an optimistic outcome and actually work towards that optimistic outcome, because otherwise things might not work out on their own.
Gosh,
the world is what we make it, and we've got to make it.
Yeah. I think that's me done for today. Dirk, it's been a sheer joy speaking with you this afternoon, and I do hope you'll come back on the talks at some point.
I would like to, yes.
Dirk, is there anything you'd like to let our listeners know about? Any events or you've got coming up, or anything you'd like them to look out for?
Yes, join the Transhumanist Party in the UK. Even if you're if you're pagan, even if you're not a UK citizen, we accept people who are not UK citizens into the party. That's one of the things that makes it a little bit different from conventional parties. But join us and help build the future. I mean, currently, in the 4 months since we've been officially sort of registered with the Electoral Commission, we've got nearly 600 people joined. We're off to a good start. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I wish you all the best, and you certainly made me intrigued in the subject. And I think I think with technology and what we're seeing in the world in that regard. It's a pretty unavoidable subject not to get into, because we're not just going to suddenly press the stop button with technology. So maybe it is time we listen to parties like you that are talking about where we're going to take that technology and how we're going to use it. So I wish you all the best.
Oh, thank you.
And it would be brilliant to have you back on again. I know Shana, our other co-host, she was very disappointed that she missed this one because she was looking forward to speaking with you. So hopefully you can come back and we'll have Shana on as well, and lots more questions for you.
Or now I'll explain the occult roots of zero state.
Well, there you go. I think that's
one for conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Well, I think we'll have to pencil that one in. Thanks again, Dirk, and we look forward to the next time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And that was Dirk Bruere. That's did I say that right? I can't really. He did tell me that was the right pronunciation, wasn't it, David?
Bruere, like
Bruere.
the cheese. Bruere, like the cheese.
That is a cool name.
Cheese. And what a wise old cheese he was. I'm still getting my head round the fact you see yourself as some sort of weird, what was it, crossbreed mongrel. I've never actually seen the Italians that way, but there we are.
There was nothing wrong with a crossbreed. I didn't say anything wrong with it. It's just, I think my point was, most people think of a nationalist as some kind of strict, over patriotic, racist sort of person, which obviously is not the case. So that was kind of like the point I was making. Yeah,
I mean, I think rather like Islam, the term nationalism is not that easy to discern. I mean, I am not personally. Although I can see the presence of cultural Marxism in lots of places, my worry tends to be neo-fascism. But this is not a politics show yet. Although I think, Paul, we need a couple on that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think more than a couple. I mean, I'm sympathetic to the New Right and to a lot of nationalistic groups out there, because I think they get really unfair press. I think it's almost like now becoming illegal for Western people to have nationalistic groups. It's all swinging very, very much to the left, but yeah, I mean, at the same time, the extreme on each side, when you get too extreme, you become narrow-minded, and then you become destructive. And I don't support that on either side. But I will say, I mean, the presence of far-right fascists doesn't really seem a threat to me at this point in time. But if you look at cultural Marxism, which is dominating the Western world at the moment, I think there are signs of it being destructive and making a lot of people unhappy, and that's something we've got to address. But, this is for all opinions welcome. But yeah, I agree. Some good subjects there.
But I mean, let's focus on Dirk's amazing contribution to this project. What I was hearing, I don't know about you, was a different type of religious questioning. What struck me was how archetypal, how very traditional some of it was in a very new way. Almost like a new religion forming, or maybe older religious impulses reforming. I mean, is that the sort of impression you got? I mean, he's got me stirred up. I know he's got you too, you stirred up too. But, I feel energized after that, because I'm hearing old and wise things in new ways. What do you think?
Like I said, I think that it's something you can't ignore. You can't just suddenly stop being intelligent and learning and creating things. And that's pretty much what transhumanism is. It's always a case of who's controlling it. Dirk sounds like a very decent, trustworthy guy. Yeah, I'd be happy for him to teach me about it and hear him. But it's when it gets into the hands of other people, it's like what he said, where he says good eugenics and bad eugenics. It's the same as anything. When power gets in the wrong hands. And I think there probably are people doing bad eugenics out there at the moment. As again, I associate that with cultural Marxism at the moment. In my opinion, I think it's a big, ugly picture that at the moment, and we've got to get more people onto cover. But what I will say about the Islamic side of things, we have got a guest coming up that's going to talk to us about that, haven't we? And he is a nationalist, and he's British, and he's a Muslim, so that's going to be very interesting.
Don't give too much away, just whet their appetites.
Yes, no. And I think that is all we've got time for this week. Thank you for tuning in again, folks. I hope you enjoyed the show. And we have, as David says, we've got some teasing guests coming up in the pipeline. We've got a controversial one next week. We're going to leave you to wonder about that one. But it's a very controversial guest we've got coming up who takes no prisoners, to say the least. But no, that's it. Thank you. Keep linking the show, telling your friends about the show. and more importantly, keep downloading the show, and have yourselves a fantastic day. Till the next time, bye.
Jazzy.